2 matches down, 4 to go today for the European, Middle East and African region here at the GLL Apex Legends series. Coming to you live from Stockholm. Our first 2 games have gone in the way of Papega Squadron and Virtus Pro. The end of that second match was absolutely hectic. I had the pleasure of my analyst to the left, Glitter Explosion and Onset, helping me understand exactly what was going on. I mean, you tried your best.
I think we're all still kind of trying to understand exactly what happened there. But I mean, we've had 2 games so far and we've had 2 crazy finishes. And I think the story that's coming out of those first 2 games is Papega Squad, right?
PP. No, PS.
Wait, what?
What's PPS, maybe?
PP and VP.
Yeah, PP and VP, yeah.
We're just going to let that one hang for a second, you know?
Yeah, well, guys, talk to me about the end of that second game, because you had some theories about exactly how it played out, right?
Yeah, I think if we talk, we can break it down a little bit more, and we're still obviously looking for, you know, a full-on conclusion to how that game was won. But we were thinking that, I mean, we're thinking, because we're speculating, we can't see every POV, but...
Yeah.
You know, VP win that game because maybe someone had a gold knockdown shield. That's an option. We didn't see it from our point of view. Maybe it was because one of the players managed to stay alive while the 2 last teams were engaging with each other. But I still don't think VP... I'm going to keep hammering this point home because I know Glitter was like, they have to zip, they have to zip. I'm like, if they zip, they're dead. And they still managed to zip. Thinking about it even more, they didn't manage to zip once. They managed to zip across that end zone twice.
I told you it was going to happen.
They took that roof as well.
2 times.
And that's what they're forced to do, though. It's kind of like the brute force tactic for VP is working at the moment. Not playing that Wraith, having that path as their only real option of mobility towards those end zones. But if you have that Gibby and you have that Watson who can drop her ult and eat up those nades and give you that little bit of protection, then given those final zones, we've seen how devastating he can be, and it's working for them. I don't know how, but it's working for them.
Let's take a look at the leaderboard and see where our teams currently stand a third of the way through day 1. Here we go, everybody. Oh, scoreboard for match 2, then we'll check out the leaderboard, I think, later in the day. So yeah, it was Virtus Pro with 22 points.
Wait.
I don't know what happened.
First place finished with 10 kills, and yeah, Rec Pack in second place. Then PPS, Papega Squadron, in third. And so I guess that changes our perspective on things slightly. My analysts have gone dead silent, so...
Okay, no.
So there with her mouth open. I have my hand on my hips.
So the reason this is happening is because Reciprocity got so many kills.
Yeah.
If you look at the 9 points, that means that they were outside of top 4, right? I believe, as far as placement point goes.
Yeah.
So... We weren't wrong.
So we're a third-place team in as far as placement was concerned, but obviously you get 1 point for an elimination and for a kill in this game. So that's where those game totals come in. That's where those points kind of work out. So it just shows, again, Reciprocity. Even though you make these end zones, it's fantastic. But if you can pick up kills along the way and be effective in the end zone of doing damage, which is what VP did as well, which is why you're seeing them with such a huge points total, not only in this game, but in the last game as well. That's the consistency you need. If you can get to end zone but pick up kills as well, you put yourself in a great spot, and that's what VP are doing right now. Yeah,
and we do, in fact, get to see our overall leaderboard for EMEA right now on screen. It's Virtus Pro and Papega drawing currently with 32 points per piece.
I just want to point out the Potatoes there in 13th place, keeping my eye on how they're doing. But the surprise for me is G2 Esports. I know it's only 2 games gone and we've got a long way to go. Of course, we should, you know, keep everything relative. But the fact that they only have 1 point on the board, and that's come from a kill, for our team that was so successful back in Poland, and we were talking about and hyping up a little bit about their consistency, that's got to be a little bit of a concern for them.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I wanted to point out too is if you look at the scores of the top 2 teams, we've got Papega and VP, they're separated only by 1 point in both their placement points and their kills, which means they're, and it's alternating the way that they're separated, so they're a complete tie right now. I don't know what's happening.
This is fun. Like, this is what we wanted, right? We wanted the EMEA region to show us how good they are, and I love the fact that we're seeing the meta being adjusted already in our first real tournament that we're seeing on this. The fact that we are seeing different compositions, and not only that we're seeing different compositions, we're seeing them be effective and be able to win games. That completely opens, you know, everything up for all the other teams who are watching at the moment. It makes them reevaluate maybe what they're doing. If they can take something away from the way that VP are playing this game, and from the way that VP are playing this map, and it creates so many more questions that need to be answered that are going to be fascinating to watch as we see the games roll on.
Yeah, I mean, in our first pre-match segment, one of our main points that we discussed was about the meta with regards to legend composition. And you mentioned, both of you, Virtus Pro were trying out some new things. And we see now, after, of course, we're early on, but after 2 games, it's paying off, right, Glitter?
Which is so weird, because I think for anyone who plays the game or watches any of the competitive community, not taking a Wraith would almost seem like...
It's first pick.
Exactly. Like, you would be like, okay, that's not possibly going to work out in their favor. And they're proving everybody wrong right now.
And I think the thing that we were talking about as well was, you know, this is fine until you get to endgame, right? We're like, what are VP going to do in that endgame? Are they going to be able to close it out? Are they not going to be able to, you know, get that dimensional rift down, what they need to do to stay alive, to not take any damage? They showed there that they can get into those end zones and they can still do damage and they can still, you know, perform in a way that they need to. It's just... I still feel, even this sounds completely crazy, because at the moment I've got a massive leaderboard behind me that says first and Virtus Pro next to it. I still think you need a Wraith. Like, I still think Wraith is such a vital character to the composition of a team. But then again, Virtus Pro stood there going, what are you on about? Come on, man, like, we're first place.
Exactly, and Onset maybe going to be another opportunity now for Virtus Pro to show you otherwise, because we are ready for our 3rd match of the day. Let's head on over to our casters and get this match underway.
All right, thanks so much, Paula, Glitter, and Onset. I would say we're just as surprised here on the desk as you've heard in the matches so far. The one thing I want to talk about, as we look at the leaderboard, there's 2 things that stand out. Obviously, Virtus Pro and Pepega Squadron. Let's talk about where they were in Poland. Pepega Squadron 13th, Virtus Pro in 14th. And then you also have 2 big disappointments. That's Na'Vi and Gamers Origin, 2nd and 4th in Poland, respectively. So over the course of these next 4 games, we're going to need to see something big from the Na'Vi and the Gamers Origin side.
Yeah, and I think though Gamers Origin, I believe, you know, had a better performance overall when looking at Poland, I can't help but feel like Na'Vi is the one that I look at and I really have that disappointment, because they've partaken in more than just the, you know, respawn-oriented kind of stuff, Twitch Rivals and things like that. They've been able to compete and have looked pretty good at things like that. So I guess I feel like I look at them and I go, how can that look that struggling here versus a lobby that you should be pretty comfortable with?
Right, yeah, absolutely. I think we expect to see different things from them here. Of course, they do have a new player coming in, right? PKMK was their player that we saw in Poland. That's where they got 2nd. Now they have Faizu coming in. He came from the Windstrike side in 21st. So to be completely honest, you have 2 players that were in the final and a player that was outside of that final. How is that going to transition? Obviously, they're going to be confident in that player, Faizu coming in. Of course, having earned the spot on the roster, but we're going to need to see some more impressive stuff from them for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, and they were a pretty lethal roster, pretty focused on being more aggressive. I think they probably stood out the most because it was like one of the more North American playstyles and the aggression coming out from, you know, EMEA. So I think the fact that maybe that we are not seeing them have that success could also play into a little bit of that World's Edge problem, right? And the fact that it may not be able to benefit it that much, because at the same time, you know, to back that idea of World's Edge and the impact, even on Kings Canyon, I often looked at Virtus Pro and I said, I think that they're some of the smartest. That being said, I completely agree with what Onset had to say. I think they got away with way too much, but I do think that they're very intelligent, and it's coming to light here on World's Edge and how they can keep that going.
Now we're taking a look here at VP as we have a west to east drop going straight over sorting. You do see the pings coming in there. We'll have to go exactly see. Looks like not going to, of course, be their drop. We would not see a team head just north to the ridge, but looks like they are going to have their eyes set on Lava City. You do see some scouting happening as well as they do split off, but it looks like not all 3 players heading to Lava City proper. I believe they have 1 player heading to Lava City North, which usually should be a free grab unless a very early geyser rotation south happens. That should be an easy grab for them. Kick also heading to the Dome.
Also could be PJ moving up there just to be able to get the beacon as well, considering it is another one of those rare kind of double beacon-ish. Not as much as Sorting Factory, and the fact that at least here for us, and it seems like the paradigm of some of the players culturally, Lava City's broken into that subsection. Once you cross that main road, the building outward we consider a northern category as you transition to Geyser. But either way, things got to be looking good. In Lava City, a very good loot point there for Virtus Pro. But we did get a glance at our circle here for our 3rd game, thanks to Lazarus, and it's extremely north. Like, I believe, roughly gauging, sitting on Skyhook / the train kind of canal that sits right on the side of Skyhook itself.
The train canal just to the east.
Yeah, which is going to force a massive rotation. It is literally the polar opposite of the map when looking at Virtus Pro. So we'll see what decisions they end up making with that information.
And it also means a lot of teams having to get through the very small chokes at the center of the map. We're talking about Underpass, we're talking about Ridge, we're talking about Fuel Depot, even Mine Pass. It's going to be a much easier side potentially for teams coming up and out of Thermal than it might be, but I think that's all the more reason that we expect to see teams get through those chokes early rather than having to wait to do any kind of hard edge on those circles.
Yeah, and it's also super interesting when looking at the luminosity decisions. You know, first thing I think it's important to keep documenting is that they are getting away with it again. Refinery and Epicenter are still completely under control here from luminosity, but I want to know the rotation out from that. They have two major choices, right? Do you want to go with like anywhere near towards that northern end of the capital city and go towards that outpost station, or are you want to go more towards like Refinery, northern, follow those train tracks and scuttle your way through? Also, due to the Pathfinder there, we can see it's going to be just south there of actual Skyhook proper, and the ping goes down for the Skyhook tunnel right there. Very good place to be able to hold up for long periods of time.
Yeah, Wisen's going to get there early. They know they don't want to you don't want to go through tunnel any later than you have to. That's where they're going to go. As we take a look at Na'Vi now at the construction side here to the south of Capital City. Longbow in hand, not something you see too often in Season 3.
Yeah, it's you know, post-charged rifle drop-off. I think that
and longbow nerfs as well.
I think the longbow has become a little bit more appealing due to again the removal of the threat of the charged rifle, but long-range fighting is still going to be a main focus point, but due to, again, the Gibraltar and some of the decisions we've seen and how the map works out, though long poking can work out at times, it does seem like the can you deal with the all-in when it matters is the main focus for a lot of these teams, which is where those devotions, the Peacekeepers, the R99s are going to be bringing out across the board.
Speaking of Turbo Devos, here's one right now for Lily of the Alliance side, taking a look at them coming in. Take a look exactly where they are. 4th place right now in the table.
We take a minute to appreciate. I'm not going to ask us to swap back, but actually we have 2 Wraithless teams in this game now. Alliance and Virtus Pro are both running the game without a Wraith. They were replacing it with a Caustic there in that last series.
And here we go. Take a look at right now at Shiv and company as they're fighting a very difficult battle against Trainyard. And I'm not surprised to see them disengage because there is no reason for them to head south into Train. It's not something easily done when you need to head there. But if you don't need to push into Train, there's absolutely no reason to. So unsurprisingly, we will then see them scoot into Drill Site.
Yeah, they're going to make the rotation out. But looking at Drill Site sitting on the other side, somebody's already existing here. Is it's going to be Samsung? And I think they got another.
Teams.
Yeah, well, at least a 3 battle here going to be unfolding underway.
And here's the chokes we're talking about, right? Here's an example of teams now having to push north through these chokes. A lot of the lobby will be dropping on the southern half of the map, as we've seen so far, and they're going to have to get through really the smallest chokes that we've seen in Apex Legends, period.
Yeah, and this is actually extremely good for the last roster we got a glance at. They're positioning with they have a double trap composition, and right now it highlights most likely going to be one of these drill site houses for our final circle. And to have a double trap composition is so rare because that third would have to be the Wraith. But again, you know, at least for some of these teams, things are getting mixed up, and maybe it's going to play out really, really differently.
Absolutely. Now, taking a look here at the hot drop side as well. Something you and I mentioned during the break, Dread, is the question of now that we're seeing Wraithless comps, now multiple in competitive Apex for the first time in competitive play, it begs the question, right? Our team, is the meta as rigid as the player base and community tends to think it is, and even we as commentators, as we watch these games, or right, are players afraid to take risks like we're seeing VP and Alliance now take? Your thoughts on that kind of scenario?
I would say, you know, and I think this is more than just Apex in general from a professional standpoint. It's a lack of innovation and creativity, and I think it's justified, by the teams. But I think it makes sense from a psychological perspective and how you end up losing versus winning in a lot of those games. You know, just to first of all, to learn a new strategy takes an insane amount of work. Innovation is far harder than following the norm, right? And so to be creative and also successful, it takes a lot of work that is maybe not worth your time. You'd be better at following kind of the standard mold and a couple other things here. But Virtus Pro moving up.
Yeah, right now pushing into Capital City crates. And looks like they're going to go ahead and try to fly right by that. And actually just try to go through, as you see, moving even further west towards Capital City South on that ring edge and just trying to avoid that skirmish on the hard edge.
Yeah, and with it only being round 1, it's surprising to see them be that, you know, kind of avoiding of that actual skirmish. It would be one that's a little bit more appealing considering, you know, their positioning in the circle in and of itself.
Now taking a look at This Is the Way, and they're in a pretty comfortable spot here right along this cliffside, all Watsoned up. And it's going to be the team that's...
We don't talk about those.
Nope. I had a feeling... I know you're a Path player.
Yeah.
I had a feeling that when I saw the exact placement of that zip, I was like, I don't know if Pathfinder's little hands can get them all the way up.
Life pro tip, when that happens, jump before you get to the wall. You get enough elevation to be able to
pop you right off.
Yeah. But anyways, here, they do end up finding somebody. Now it ends up dropping the bubble. Can't help but wonder if that was necessarily intentional or at least necessary. I guess that is a beacon being picked up there as I see PJ able to get that. So it makes sense here. And it is actually a very southern skyhook.
Yep.
And I'm willing to say this right now, judging by what we got informationally. This, in my opinion, is one of the more controversial kind of circles in the fact that it is a massive divide between the skyhook side and the non-skyhook side. Yep. And if you choose the wrong half at the wrong time, there is no overcoming, much like the tunnel problem of before. And for this perspective, as we see here with Lazarus, they have no idea how problematic this may become and that they're forced to make a decision maybe a bit earlier than they like.
Yep, Reciprocity EU already here on this western side of Skyhook. You bring up a great point there, Dredd. Anyone who was catching scrims the past few weeks since the December 3rd update where these end circles have been adjusted, there's actually examples of Skyhook final circles where the entire lobby thought it was for sure pulling a certain way, and Watsoned up in certain buildings, and it actually pulls way northeast outside of Skyhook. So one thing we know, and we haven't explicitly mentioned here on the casting desk, they've talked a little bit about it at the analysis booth, is that teams know that they cannot be as certain as they were pre-December 3rd on exactly how these end circles are going to be. So expect them to bring that. At first, it was frustration, but I think now it's going to result in a little bit more hesitancy and them playing cautious on exactly how they play and just how much they commit to a single piece of high ground, a rock, a building, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair. And for some of the teams that might luck out with, the Skyhook Pass, right? The first team we saw with any information on Skyhook was willing to look towards the Skyhook Pass. There are some teams that may luck out on that decision early enough, but most of them I do think are going to have to kind of play it on the fly here as Kick is trying to make their way up here on the most western kind of channel up towards that northern section of the map. They're going to commit with a eastern kind of rotation over, it seems like here, rather than going to the northern side of Skyhook and then make your way in. It's going to be safer when looking at the immediate circle, but I can't help, again, with us having a bit more information than them, I wonder if that is going to be the best decision for them due to our concerning next round of circle. And I think, again, I'm putting a lot of fear towards this future, so I think it's important to highlight. We're closing round 2. Round 3 is going to highlight it. It isn't round 3 that's the problem. It's round 4 closing that people are going to have really, really big problems with.
And Luminosity knows they're going to need to move quick here. I mean, they're still holding pretty far east outside, really just trying to see if they can maybe get some picks of people that are being forced to late rotate. But in the back of their minds, they're getting ready to make that move as well.
Yeah. And Virtus Pro with a more northern angle there. Actually, look at this. Sitting up on what is a bit of, I believe, the Sniper's Ridge here is going to be Magedy and friends.
And you can assume they're the only team up here. Not a lot of room for more than one squad up on this.
The only other team that could hide is one person or a group at the very high end of that, right? And they've probably scattered it by now. And even then, you're actually right. It's all out of the circle. So they're comfortable here, and I use the word comfortable loosely. Being down a member, not very good loot, definitely not weaponry to deal with that range. Once they're forced off the Sniper's Ridge, they will try and make a rotation into one of those western houses, and it's not going to look good. It's going to be very, very challenging.
Yeah, and we did see Kick, by the way, not only with Scout play in hand, which we've seen, but also Flatline as a secondary right here into the mid-game. So you and I talked about it. Maybe we'll see a little bit more Flatline. We'll have to see, as we've seen a tiny bit more adoption than what we saw around the timing of September and Poland, but it's a Wingman EVA 8 here for just Pew Pew on the side of This Is the Way. Now checking back on board with Lazarus, still around train yard.
Find themselves one target sitting on those hanging train carts, 4 of them up above. Only Pathfinder can really help your team be able to get up there with the initial zip or with his own grapple. I say that I don't actually know if Octane does have options to help you, but he's so out of the meta that I haven't even done the math on if Octane actually can. So maybe an exception here.
They're also going, I mean, this is what we talked about. This is probably, as we talk to pro players before these events, that's one of the toughest battles, period, of shooting into train yard from the outside from any angle, especially with an end circle. But if you don't need to be in train yard, I'm not surprised to see Lazarus just start to scoot into Hill Valley, because get out of there. The teams that are holding down those top train yard areas are looking for these free picks, and teams like Lazarus are making sure they don't get them for more reasons than one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of crazy stuff going on here, actually, at this point in time. You already see on the other side of Skyhook Pass, if you're on the southern side of Skyhook Pass, you're in a bad spot, because Skyhook Pass is going to be choked by every single person. And again, this isn't the round that's going to be overly concerning. The next one is where that escalates contemplates very, very heavily because it's going to remove the side options. That is the only way to make your way into that final circle.
And to be honest, teams like Samsung Morningstars need to be careful as well because, yes, they do have this rooftop, but they have their backs to that pass, which in the end of those choke battles, one or two teams is going to come flying through when they get forced through, right? So even though they're safe right now, we often see teams want to avoid setting up on that skyhook side that's near that choke, right around that southern tip. You kind of want to get away from that if you can, but of course, end circle might force us right to it.
Yeah, and if you're on those western side of skyhook, your concern is all about whether or not, if you look at the mini-map right there, that bottom left-hand side, that ridge that you see glancing there from skyhook, that is the most important transition into skyhook because it's not the bottleneck that we see when looking at skyhook pass itself. Kick, though, find themselves in a tough position here in one of the western houses of skyhook itself. Seems like a target sitting on the second floor here. Gibraltar bubble already down there from the high ground. That's what we see there.
And there we go.
Oh, they tried to go with the self-destruct. It's actually getting removed by the Watson generator up above.
I'm not sure if they knew that gen was there. Now trying to push in. Still good on shields. Might try to fly up. 2 goals in hand. Thermite's on the door, though, so they will get that first player down. It's going to be the Ogre there on the side of Gambit.
You're going to take this time here to at least utilize the generator given on the other side. Matrix shielding up there with a cell. They find themselves on the other side here in the other building to the northern half. They don't have to hard commit to this fight if they would like to, buy a little bit of time here. Again, we're more worried of where that next circle is going to be, and they still have 30 seconds for this one to close in.
And this is going to be a really good first example we're seeing in this tournament play on the new map of how difficult it is for teams to push into buildings now that we see things like multi-level buildings. Pushing a building in Kings Canyon is very different. It was very straightforward. Here with multi-tiered buildings, you're going to see teams a little bit more hesitant. You have to be so coordinated on these pushes and know exactly which of these 3, sometimes more levels these teams are in.
Yeah, and look at this here. Lazarus already down 2 members, trying to question if they want to go for the banners as round 3 is actually closing just on the backside of this. Is he going to go for a double banner pickup or play it just as slow as possible? The fact that he wasn't willing to go for any shielding or swap, it's going to be an interesting moment there here. But either way, oh, actually, excuse me, it just concluded closing, so he is fine. Okay, we're good for now here. But time's up. We do get the information over where round 4 is. And as you see, Sky Pass is out and also is the Western opportunity to be able to make your rotation in. Things are about to get very, very hairy here for our squads. And weirdly enough, all 20 still alive here with us, Bravo.
Absolutely. And I believe we have 7 total buildings still in. And right now, just based off of a pure numbers game, this is not always the case with Skyhook and Capital City ends. We are almost certainly going to have a building, at least one building in play until very late in this game.
Reciprocity EU here find themselves in it. Whoever they're shooting at in a really bad spot, right? Every team like this are the ones to not find themselves a Sky Home, kind of condo when the economy was good. You got to get in the Sky Home early. You do. But now they're sitting, post-economic house crash and housing crisis, and it's hot real estate. Gonna have to fork over a little bit more here. And Reciprocity
push on Papega Squadron here. Yes, indeed. Reciprocity EU pushing on Papega Squadron. We'll see if they can get all the kills. They get another one. Balin G is down. It means only 1 player alive for Papega Squadron as well. And it looks like, so far they haven't gotten it yet. So we'll see if they can find that last player on PS.
And one thing really quickly here before all the action kind of unfolds, I want to shout out to Luminosity and the rotations. We've gotten 2 glances of their past 2, and they're very comfortable doing what we got from them even on Kings Canyon, which is some of those riskier outskirt play, kind of playing the edge, and then we're looking for a hard commitment later. We're yet to see them commit on this one, but again, just showing that this team, not only can they shoot, but if they have to macro, they're pretty clever as well.
And look here, we also see This is the way. Also doing a little bit of gatekeeping on drill, trying to get anyone else who tries to come through these chokes to try to come up into Skyhook.
That Gibraltar ultimate is going to be a gift and a curse because they actually have to move through that in just a couple of seconds. And their teammate, though, yes, the damage won't come through, you know, having that impairment when it comes to the visuals and just the physicality there.
Maybe they're going to portal around it.
Could be the case, but that's not even the team we're looking at. It's actually the one they're battling who got the Wraith portal on the backside of it where the Gibraltar ultimate was.
But now they're through.
They make their way through. They find themselves a couple of tangos. It's going to be a full party there. The Gibraltar ultimate ends up, or excuse me, not ultimate, but the bubble goes down. Shiv ends up dropping a Watson generator. He survives. He's getting shot at all over. How is this team even holding on?
I could not tell you. I think that's finally going to be it for them, and they will eventually go down. But my goodness, did they hold on for quite some time there. And that's going to be the end for them as they will drop.
Reciprocity, though, still looking good in this house. And we've got information of who actually chose the proper location and the fact that 1 1/4 of buildings do exist in the next round here for round number 5. A lot of teams got to make a big transition here over the next minute and 15 seconds, though.
Taking a look at a cooler for the first time in a while. Definitely taking some damage, and they need to play this very carefully. Reciprocity, you actually, we were in a great place, but now as they're being forced to push in, they are losing everything.
Yeah, those thermites were so perfectly placed, double stacked into a very, very bad position there for Nesh. See if he will be able to get up here as the way. Throw down their bubble. Medkit going to go through. Going to be pretty easy to get that in this downtime thanks to the nice buff over Season 3 onto Gibraltar. But they still got a lot of ground to cover.
They do, and we can expect to see more where that came from in terms of teams being forced to create that cover and heal up as we still have 16 squads left as things are getting real thin.
And this is where we got to start asking the question of who the heck owns that building there, Bravo. We have no idea who resides inside what feels like an unlosable circumstance here so far,
really
especially
does.
if it's a double trap squad.
Battle here now, once again, for This Is the Way. And we've seen them fight out of a few battles and just taking shots. Now it's only DeFaust who's trying to stay alive. On the other side, though, Reciprocity EU also in trouble. A little bit of slow healing for two of them on the Watson ult. They're going to need more than that, though, to be fight ready as this ring starts to move.
Yeah, it's going to pressure about perfect timing for that shielding to come through and to make a play here.
You're going to see a lot of teams drop here.
Yeah,
momentarily.
It's going to be dropping like flies here. Nighties, though, does get in a decent position for Kick and the rest of the squad. Got themselves a flatline. They're going to be able to gatekeep out as the Gibraltar shield does end up going down. Just nice couple of sprays. Going to be able to get that crack there, but Matrix still has to be able to defend. He ends up going for the blind push and gets the hip fire there with the flatline. That's going to be an easy double here, but Matrix and friends low on the HP. Can they get back to shield?
Kick barely lives to tell the tale. That will be also... That Gibraltar Q is expired. That's going to be another team going down. Didn't catch exactly who that was. We see exactly how many teams are left. Na'Vi, one of the 8, still remaining in this game. Shots coming in the windows. And like you said, that team was in premium real estate, but now they are going to have to move out too, as our final circle is going to be in the wide open.
Oh, wow.
Get ready for those Gibby ults to come out. Excuse me, those Gibby tacks to come out.
Yeah, I know.
And the ults, they'll also be there too.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of everything. Gibraltar is going to be able to hold up, and the trapping threat is not as concerning because the final house isn't there. Here we see Luminosity, last member alive to Tanya, is going to end up dropping here. No way he ends up surviving there with that res shield. There is the cleanup here. Na'Vi, the one putting down the final blow, gets an armor swap, nopes right back out of this. Really good decision making there. And they're feeling comfortable, but it should be noted the location of dominance for Na'Vi right now is still in that corner home that isn't in that final circle. They need to go back through that portal and make this play in the next couple of seconds, basically defend themselves out for the rest of this game. And we've got ourselves still 8 squads. And the fact that he made that rotation without the armor is very, very bold. He's trying to get that armor swap, right? Trying to make sure they can bring more in if they can, but with only 20 seconds remaining, to be honest, I'm surprised that they have much concern with this side of the battlefield.
Right, absolutely. Me as well, as we're going to see things get now in 10 seconds, once again, start to thin out. 7 squads left here, as we do see finally that is going to be the finish there on this Desu. It comes from G2.
The question is do you keep people on the Na'Vi on the backside to stay back with his longbow and chip away at those targets moving into the circle, and then hope that your team can clean up, take some circle damage in order to chip away at them?
They got to go right now.
Samsung ends up going through the portal, gets a pre-heal, but he's not going to be able to get this very effectively. It's just questionable to pop that beforehand to go through the portal. We'll see if it works for them.
Still no squads dropping just yet. Looking at 0-0's POV. Now all of G2 still sitting on 2 purples and a blue, and just in that very bit of corner that's left here, the only interior left on the map.
It's looking good for now here. I didn't think that this circle actually would have any actual
keep in mind
structure.
And also keep in mind that map that we play with, right, is not pixel perfect to these buildings.
Yeah.
So when we do have these zooms, and also it happens for players as well.
Yeah.
When you zoom in all the way down as far as you can on that map, that does not guarantee either side. The players need to know from scrim results, from battles, which corners might be in based on exactly where that circle's going to go.
And here we see Kick still holding their own here on the other side of this fence. 3 squads remain. They should be pretty good to be able to get the threat onto this one target, but they know they've got to be concerned with wherever that third team actually is. A flatline's the weapon you want in this circumstance. Same with the Peacekeeper, 18 shots sitting on tap. The generator going down is a big setback. See if any grenades come through. One of the more comfortable moments. Generator 2 goes down.
Yep, G2 still inside. Also self-trace here for the portal.
They need to be able to force this Wraith portal in the actual circle itself. Otherwise, I think it's still going to be basically a losing scenario if you do not force for that final circle. So do you use the Wraith Q to get out into the circle, or do you wait for the Hail Mary play later on I don't know. Something we'll take a glance at here.
So I believe we have, kick here. G2 still on the inside as well. And now push is coming in there on the open, and it looks like there's exactly where that portal is going to connect back to.
Yeah, and if these two teams get too distracted with one another, keep in mind, again, if that portal does make the way out for G2, they're going to be very, very good over this next and final battle. 15 seconds out. And on the other side here, the Matey roster.
That's the Wizen side.
Yeah, the Wizen is going to be struggling down a man. So we'll see what happens here. Kick versus Wizen, what happens, and if G2 can make their way out.
Those are the questions here. They're watching that portal. Look at that just upstairs. And that's what the Gibby Q brings in, is these battles where you can see each other perfectly and just forcing teams in. We'll go ahead and see if they're ready for this push.
The portal's everywhere there as Gibraltar ends up throwing down the shield. That's going to be a big peacekeeper shot coming through as Kick ends up losing one. Not going to lose two quite yet here. Wizen ends up immediately going down there. I think that's G2 coming through.
I think so as well.
To be able to close that out through that portal.
Yeah, but we saw Nox coming in as well as eliminations, and I do believe that's going to be the G2 side that closes out. We'll wait for final word there on that. But based on how they were looking at, as well as those final two pushes, they were the team that was sitting pretty, and I think they were able to pull it off in the end. Like you said, surprising given that we were getting pulled outside of that building.
Yeah, that was another pretty interesting moment. I would say not as wild as our last one, right? And the fact that the Wraith was so set up for so long, and that is not something we haven't seen. That's very common at that point in time, right? But with the portal and how much opportunity they had to get out there.
We're seeing Kick. We'll have to get confirmation. We'll have to see. All we saw at the end were death screen after death screen after death screen.
And that means that Kick...
That makes more sense than G2 winning from potentially that building, if depending on how far that ring was pushing. We'll have to wait for final word.
All right. Yeah, no, and I think I agree with you. I think it makes sense, like, on first glance, especially considering how Kick, once they threw down the Gibraltar shield, it was basically like, who wants to fight us, right? And knowing that they had a two-man fight on the other side, as long as the portal play wasn't smooth coming out of that, and I think they did a good job of disrupting that, but I could see a world where, and I guess my first instinct was usually, and when we see these 1 versus 1 versus 1 or the final three-team battles, the two who remain on the same tier of elevation get so distracted with each other that the other just pulls ahead, even if it wasn't a shot advantage.
Certainly, yeah, we've seen it before. Guys on the desk here, Glitter, Onset, Paula, what are you thinking of that last match?
If it was Kick that won it, parabens to them, the Portuguese esports organisation taking their first win here at GLL Apex Legends Series. I'm going to assume that is the right result that we've got there. And guys, what do you think about the gameplay they showed us?
I think that game, we got to experience what a little bit slower pacing in Apex feels like. The first two games were really hectic, really chaotic, and very hyped at the end. This kind of gave you some insight into how the pros play those weird end zones. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. I was hoping for a Skyhook end zone. I didn't picture it ending exactly where it did in Skyhook. That was like super far south, but Kick had a great spot under that building the entire time for like the last two rings, and they were totally safe.
Yeah, I think that's a more traditional, should we say, ending to an Apex game that we would expect. That's where the Wraith play does come in, because you have to portal out. G2 were in that position where they had to portal down. That was where I think Kick had the advantage, not just with their positioning and the fact that they were under G2, who had to portal out, so they would have had that visual aid of, you know, where that team are going to be pushing from, as well as being aware there was only two players on the other team, the other side, which is, of course, Wizen. So they kind of had advantages as far as knowing where their opponents are and where they had to push, but also having that cover, having that Watson ult down meant that anyone who was trying to do damage to them, they were always going to be essentially full shielded going into that battle. They had the positioning, they knew where the team were going to push. It was just a case of hitting shots, and they did so.
From what I've seen so far, these finishes can be extremely complicated, very, very hectic. How much control do the players in those final moments actually have beyond just, you know, trying to check every angle and just doing anything they can to salvage whatever they have left?
I mean, there's a million decisions made within a few seconds.
It seems like so many decisions are being made in such a short space of time. Like everything really collapses into a really intense situation.
Especially with those sort of final 30 seconds or so before that final ring really does enclose. You have so many decisions being made, and then it's a case of executing. And that's where your IGL is so, so vital. You need to have confidence in the leader of your team to follow his instruction and execute as well. We'll see a lot of times teams who don't succeed in that last push, in that end circle, in that final three teams, are the ones second guess themselves with one decision. One player might go slightly late and think, oh, I don't think that's the right play. You have to commit. If it doesn't work afterwards, and you have that experience again, okay, that didn't work this time, we'll try something different next time. But all of them committed to the same thing. And as I say, Kick had the advantage in those fights, and they managed to close it out, which is, props to them. They'll be very happy with how that's gone.
Leading on from that, Glitter, do you expect to see any repeat winners over the 12 games over the 2 weekends?
I'd love to see some more stuff come out of G2. We'd spoken about them a little bit before the games even started, and you pointed out last time that they were all the way down at the bottom of the leaderboard, which is not where I think any of us expected them to be. This game really allowed them to kind of show up and prove how good they can be. Maybe they just needed to warm up a little bit, kind of find their footing, and then throughout the rest of the weekend, I'm hoping they can continue to do the same.
Perhaps let's get up the scoreboard now and see where we are left after match 3. It was Kick Esports taking the first place, finished 21 points overall thanks to their 9 kills. And G2 did get that second place spot, and it was Wizen in third. We see Pepega now dropping to the very bottom, not getting any points at all. Virtus in 11, so our 2 winners from games 1 and 2. Struggling in the third matchup, perhaps, as Glitter said. The other teams warming up and everybody finding their feet and more competition for all of the teams involved. Now let's see our leaderboard and where that puts us. Virtus Pro and Pepega still in first and second position, respectively, and Kick shooting themselves up into third, but very tight between those top 6 or so placements. And so it's good to see that the competition is genuinely warming up.
And Reciprocity has done a really good job of just being consistent. They might not have pulled out a win yet, but you can see across the board they've been doing very, very well for themselves, both in placement and in kills, to keep themselves in top 4. So if they even get one good win in, it could really completely push them up to the top.
Yeah, one team that we're seeing make endgame quite a lot as well is Wizen, but they don't seem to be able to clutch up those final moments. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on, because you only need one big performance to push you into those top 3 positions, because you are going to get kills and eliminations towards the end game if you execute what you need to do properly. Keep an eye on them. They're making it to that end game. It's just a case of putting some points on the board and maybe just tightening up a few little areas of their game and executing, as I say, those last moments.
Absolutely. It's definitely been a fierce competition so far, and I do think it's at the point where if anybody was having cold feet at the start, that now the teams are really starting to feel it, and we're seeing that through the standing starting to change a bit in the scoreboard. Glitter, what are your thoughts?
I was actually kind of a little bit surprised at the strong start that LG had, and then now they've kind of tapered off a little bit. You would think that it would go the opposite way. I think we're halfway through now, right, for the first day for EMEA.
Yep.
The players can choose to change things up or keep things the way they have been. The fact that so many different comps on the teams are staying the same, like people have committed to their new legend selection, is kind of surprising. I figured maybe like the whole no Wraith thing might be like let's try it once and then reel it back in. Everyone's very committed to the Gibraltars, to the Caustics. Like, okay, I'm fine with it. I like watching this type of Apex. I'm down.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at consistency and repeat winners as well, end circles do come into that a lot, and the rotations that you have to make as a team. I'm just looking at, of course, the drop that Luminosity had in that last game. They had to move through some extremely tight choke points on the map to even get into Skyhook. So it's not too surprising to me, seeing as they had to enter through either the tunnel to the north of the map or through that tiny little choke point where there's towers and so many buildings that are overlooking. Doesn't surprise me they didn't have the best of finishes there. However, we've seen what they can do if they do get a little bit more of a fortunate circle that pulls towards that epicenter and that refinery area. So Luminosity, if they can maybe have a game where they can place well with one of those difficult rotations, I think they'll be pretty good as far as placements and points are concerned as we roll through the tournament.
Thank you so much, guys. Well and truly underway now here at the GLL Apex Legends series. 3 matches done, 3 more to go for day 1. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back with number 4 right after this break.